Now that I've established the 2016 polls weren't unusually inaccurate and that many misinterpret how to read probabilities, let's get to the meat and potatoes of it all. How does polling work? In its most basic form, polling works via random sampling. Cliff Notes version is that random sampling uses a set of individuals chosen from a larger population. Each individual is chosen randomly and entirely by chance, in a way that each individual has the same probability of being chosen. So, as long as people aren't targeted for polling, a sample size as few as 800 people gives an accurate snapshot of the preferences of 150 million registered voters. The margin of error you see listed at the bottom of polls indicates the error expected by scaling the sample size to the true population, and it's often about 4%. Think of it this way. It's like trying to figure out the depth of a large lake by putting a boat on random autopilot, taking measurements at irregular intervals for a total of 100 measurements. In some cases, the measurement will miss a nearby deep spot, but it's just as likely that the next measurement will miss an underwater ridge. So, when the measurements are averaged out, they'll provide a pretty accurate picture of the lake on whole. Random sampling is more than a theory. It's been used successfully for decades. All right, back to people, not lakes. The dominant form of polling today creates randomization by selecting samples of telephone area codes and then adding random digits to the end. The first step ensures samples are spread out by geography, while adding random numbers makes sure that even unlisted numbers are included. Of course, getting people to answer the phone is increasingly difficult, but a lower response rate in and of itself isn't an issue as long as the responses are still random. One area in which a lack of responses can become an issue is something known as differential partisan non-response. The basic idea here is that if your candidate has a negative event, such as a public gaffe or a scandal, you're going to be less likely to respond to a pollster. Your mind hasn't changed as to who you vote for. You basically just don't want to talk about it at this moment. These differential partisan non-responses can be easily filtered out from the data by resampling after the dust has settled. So it's not an issue long term, but it can create noise in the numbers that isn't a real move in the race. There are other methods of polling too, like online polls, which have grown in popularity. However, this type of polling is still seen as inferior, as it often relies on opting in, removing the random sampling aspect. Also, it can't reach those without internet access. So, the phone is still the polling gold standard. Okay, I hope you're still with me because we have one more important topic to address: weighting. Weighting is used in order to make sure the sample being used fits the real population. The method most often used is called post-stratification. Here's an example. Say pollsters happen to get 59% of the responses from women. Well, we know from the census that women actually make up about 51% of the population. So, in order to fit reality, the weight of the answers by women would be reduced, and the answers from men would be increased. This is particularly important when it comes to ethnicities that are harder to sample. For example, young black men are statistically more difficult to reach for a polling response, so their answers are often weighted more heavily to account for the African American population. Ideally, not much weighting should be needed, and it should only occur with variables that should be correlated with political choice. One aspect that some pollsters still don't weight, but the best do, is education. Not waiting for education is found to be the main reason for slightly higher polling errors in swing states in 2016, particularly in the Midwest. That, and not the so-called shy Trump voter effect, was crucial there. If you're interested, there's more on that in my upcoming bonus episode called The Myth of the Shy Trump Voter. It's crucial to realize that not all polling is created equal. Polling funded by a candidate, political party, or organization should not be taken with the same weight as polling from an independent source. And even among independent sources, some pollsters have better track records than others when it comes to verification. Polling aggregates are a good place to start, as they tend to smooth out errors and provide a good overall picture of a race. Finally, remember, polling is a snapshot in time, so don't view polling once or twice several months before an election and expect nothing has changed by voting day. I hope this series has helped explain polling and prove that it still works just fine, even in this charged political landscape.